I wanted to point out too that Cape Biscayne property, if you've had a chance to be out there, it's really breathtaking, and it's really part of the Lost Coast that's been private for a long time, and it's kind of amazing that the public's going to be able to experience another section of the Lost Coast Trail. Up next is Neil Davis, and we've been really coastal focused, but now we get to hear about inland trails and partnerships. And I know Neil's vision, and a lot of you want to be able to go inland sometimes and get out of the fog. And not only that, but like get there maybe by hiking or biking or a horseback. So Neil's got a lot of exciting ideas and projects that he's going to talk about.
Thank you. Like she said, my name's Neil Davis. I'm the lead volunteer for the Ukiah Valley Trail Group. And I'm going to take about 10 minutes to tell you about some of the things that we have going on that we're thinking about in the inland that maybe could even migrate this direction. I'm going to talk about how we kind of approach thinking about where we could go with new trails, and then specifically some of the areas that we have available to us that we know that we can potentially build trails in. So if I could go ahead. So when we're talking a lot about the California Coastal Trail, and that's a trail that I think of as kind of the juiciest plum on the tree trail. We have, hundreds of miles of coast here that's absolutely gorgeous, and everybody says, well, we have to have a trail along that. And that's one way to approach going after trails, is say, we've got to have a trail there, and you put all your efforts there. I don't know how to signal you. I've got to do these things here. But the California Coastal Trail is a really juicy trail. Lake Mendocino. Now, we looked at a couple of different places that we could potentially build trails. We started 5 years ago as an all-volunteer group, and the west side of Ukiah was very, very appealing to us. But there's a lot of people who own property there, like all of it, and they don't want us to build trails there. So we thought maybe we'll build trails where they want us to build trails, which was Lake Mendocino. And so we went over there with the Army Corps of Engineers, who were really, really easy to work with and helpful, and we got a lot of work done right away. And because I think we had done that, we were then able to go and build 1.5 miles of trail on the west side of Ukiah on some city-owned property. And we got virtually no resistance from the local property owners. And that was my biggest worry. For a couple of years we were planning this, and I was constantly planning, well, what am I going to say when they complain about trash? What am I going to say when they complain about this? And when we got to it, we really heard hardly any complaints. And so we were able to build the trail pretty easily. What we still have coming up out there is Cow Mountain. We're working on a recreational management plan with them, and we can potentially have up to 40 miles of trail up there. And so it's not the California coast, but it's some nice area, and we can potentially build a lot of trail there. And then we think about a cross-county trail. Now that's a juicy trail. That's a sexy trail that gets people excited about building trails. But again, really, really difficult and a lot of work to do. So probably from our perspective, that's not necessarily where we want to go. Next slide, please. So I want to introduce the concept of stacked loops of trails. And this is how we really think about where we're going with thinking about new trails. And we want to think in these terms, our perspective is at least, whether we're thinking about a county-wide trail system or a system of trails just at, say, for example, Low Gap Park, which is only a couple hundred acres. We want to have stacked loops of trails in either case. Now you see here, I did this artwork myself, by the way. We have a small system, or maybe it's a big system, but two different trailheads. I can start, I take a little finger, don't I? So if I want to start on Monday, I can do a hike here, and on Tuesday I can do a hike here. Wednesday I can do a hike like this. In other words, you can do all kinds of variations of these things, and every day of the week you're going someplace different. You can go do it backwards tomorrow and get a different experience. And we get much better use of our trail dollars by building trails in this style, because we maximize the experience that we can have. And so our thought is that this is the way we should be thinking about designing trails, whether we're designing them that way in one small area or across the entire county. Next slide, please. I did this one too. This, for those of you who don't read maps quite as well, is a map of Mendocino County. So we can see that here in Ukiah, we have our stacked loops of trails right around there. And then over by Fort Bragg, look how good she is. Over by Fort Bragg, we have our stacked loops of trails there. And then we look at Jackson, I got a little dyslexic here, Jackson Demonstration State Forest. So we build our stacked loops of trail there. If we keep working our little stacked loops out a little at a time, then we have a relatively short distance to make our cross-county trail. And I want to kind of, so that's kind of the way we're thinking of how we want to move our trails around. If those of you who live out here in Fort Bragg are gradually working on getting your trails farther and farther out towards us, and we're doing the same thing, then we can come together, which is what we want to do, I think. So we think of webs of trails around population centers. We think of stacked loops of trails. We want to then have connecting trails between those stacked loops. But one of the things that we really need to think about is, are we building trails for ourselves here, who live here, or are we building trails for tourists who come here? And again, okay, stop going ahead now. Thank you. So for me, living in the Ukiah Valley, I want to have all those little stacked loops of trails right around here. As wonderful as it would be to have a trail that goes from Ukiah all the way to Fort Bragg, even though I'm really strong, I can't hike or ride my bike very often from Ukiah to Fort Bragg. That trail is going to end up being a 50 or 60 mile trail. But a tourist might really want to do that. And so if we build those trails out in one little piece at a time, then we can have trails for us as locals right near where we're going, and then also have trails that will really appeal to the tourists. I kind of envision us having someday a trail system wherein somebody from the Bay Area or Sacramento would drive to Hopland or Ukiah, park their car, do a couple of days of riding around that area, ride from Hopland to Ukiah, stay there with a little shuttle bus running them around, so you don't have to carry all your stuff. So you have trails that are good for locals and good for tourists, and that's good for all of us. So that's kind of our general concept of how we're thinking about developing a trail system here. Specifically, what we have going on in the inland of Ukiah is, like I said, we started doing a lot of work at Lake Mendocino, and we don't have too many more trails that we can build in that area because it's pretty densely trailed. But we've really rebuilt or relocated almost every trail out there, so that there's now about 16 miles of trail out there, and it's all nice and well built and designed, I think, so it's easily maintainable. They're all multi-use trails, by the way, for non-motorized users, that is. Next slide. Low Gap Western Hills, there's a couple little clicks here. So it's like 90% privately owned, and that might even be an understatement. It might be more than that. But it's still mostly undeveloped. And we did just, and I guess, oh yeah, it's about 3 miles from one side of town to the other. So if we were able to get the cooperation of landowners, we could potentially have a trail all along the north-south corridor of the Ukiah. And then we did just finally get this 1.5 miles of new trail built up there. And not surprisingly, it's been hugely popular because people can walk right from their home to the trailhead and then end up doing about a 5 or 6 mile hike in that area and then hike home. Okay. So obviously we didn't work. Then another place that we potentially can build some more trail is up around the county park, Mill Creek County Park. And I did this work too, I want to say. It's a little nicer. The yellow line that you can barely see there is the property line. The red line is old trail that had completely grown over before our trail group started. We got that reestablished. The place where it shows little dotted lines in there is really steep and not very well designed. So the green lines are what we're suggesting as potential new trail up there. We would reroute the trail where all the little red dots are and then build 1 mile to 1.5 miles of an additional trail. You can also see right up in here, this is Cow Mountain area. This is all federally owned land, BLM land. So there's the potential. So we already have a trail that comes up this way called Valley View Trail. Next slide, please. This is an overhead shot of the same area. That's the little lake that is shown on that lake on the previous slide. And so this is the area where our map was. Let's see, somewhere it's hard to see, but there's a trail that comes up along in here. It's right along here. This is Valley View Trail, and it comes on up into BLM area. There's 25,000 acres of BLM area on the south part of Cow Mountain that is for non-motorized use. I said that backwards. It's North Cow Mountain has 25,000 of non-motorized area, and the south part is for motorized use. But we still have 25,000 acres that's available for us to build trail on. We have a recreational management plan, it's called, that's been approved. It allows us up to 40 miles of new trail there. Now we need to write the more specific trail plan, and that's the next step, and then we start raising money and building a lot of new trail there. And that's just one more picture of that area. And what I'm showing you here is that this is the Vichy Springs kind of area, and all up in here is Cow Mountain. So what we really want to be looking for is multiple access points where we can make it easier for people to get on up there. And I think that's just about all I got. Is there another slide, or am I going to run out? Oh, right, yeah. Another big opportunity for us. You know, if I had known there was going to be this many people, I'd have spent more time on this presentation. Who knew? But so a cross-county trail is a really sexy thing, but also the rail trail. We have a railroad line that is currently not in use. It's still the railroad authorities does still want to get trains going on it again. But what we want to do is say, let's have a rail width trail. We can't have both. Nationwide, there are over 60 rail width trail projects that exist, and they have great safety records. What I saw was they had one accident, and it sounds really like it was a drunk guy fell on the tracks and waited to get run over. So obviously the railroad operators, many of them aren't very crazy about this idea, but some of them are starting to come around to the idea when they realize that if they want to get their trains going again, maybe they have to allow more public access. And the Southern Marin Area Rapid Transit, did I get that acronym right? Something like that. They're really driving this process down in Marin County. They've got a lot of money going to this. And then up north, up around Arcata and Humboldt, they're doing some really good work on getting a rail trail going again. And I'm hoping that that will kind of jumpstart us to getting a rail trail going here too. Uh-oh, we missed a picture in there. Shoot. The next picture was a picture of a rail width trail where it looks really nice. And so the other idea is that this is just like a linear park that's really waiting to emerge for us. Okay? So I think that's about all I have to say. This is our mission statement. Please give us your support. And I just want to really encourage you to sign up for our mailing list. We're at close to 500 supporters, and I really think that if we can get up to 1,000 or more people, we start to really be able to influence public policy and get support for these processes by showing that we really have a lot of public support for what we do.
Yeah, over in Cow Mountain some years back, the BLM was working with the CCC on Cow Mountain on trails. So they got the funding together. Do you still work with them, the CCC?
We have just started working with the CCC again. It took a little while to... What I find is that a lot of times, I'm going to offend some people in the room, some of the professionals who do professional work you have to really, it takes a little time to get them to trust you. We're volunteer groups, and once they kind of see that you will do what you said you're going to do, and that you do quality work, and that you can actually help them, then they start kind of coming around. But the CCC it took quite a while, but they helped us build the trail on the west side of.
BLM helped get the money for that work. They helped by working.
Well, those kind of partnerships are absolutely what we need to be doing. Yeah. I think you were next, actually.
Do you engage archaeologists and hydrologists and plant people before you do these trails?
We don't own any of the property ourselves, so what we do is we go to the property manager, say this is what we want to do, and then the property manager really needs to tell us what kind of studies may need to be done, and we're going to do whatever is required.
I have a similar question, which is what kind of input is your group getting when you design a trail in terms of wild animals? Because some of them need really large range areas, and not necessarily just things like mountain lions. Sometimes snakes
Again, it's up to the land manager to make the distinction of what kind of studies need to be done and what kind of environmental impact reports have to be done. And if they say we need a particular study, we'll help get it done, or they'll have to get it done.
And if it was private land, then there really wouldn't be any land manager, and hence no studies.
We haven't built a trail on private land yet, so I don't know.
Cross that bridge.
We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. I mean, I want to point out that I think we really think of ourselves as a conservation group. We're not a recreation group. I mean, or we? Well, we are. I mean, but secondarily, we're people who go out and recreate in public lands because we love the public lands, and we want it. We don't want to hurt anything, and so we try and be as aware as we can be, and try and make sure that we do all the studies that we need to do, and try and work on some restoration projects when that seems appropriate.
You know, is there a sign-up sheet if people want to sign up to get?
Thank you, Lori. Yeah, back in the other room there, we have the Ukiah Valley Trail Group has a sign-up sheet where you can sign up. Tamara, you're gonna have to cut me off when it's time to cut me off.
Two more questions?
Okay.
I have a question.
Oh, you.
There was a trail made years ago from Mendocino to Willits, actually. It was an old historical Sherwood
The
trail.
hiking
And I think it
equestrian trail.
was in the county, you know, that it is down as a county trail. My question is there, through your organization, a way to help open that whole trail back up again?
Yeah, I think the way to do it is to get as many people signed up as possible, and you know, we have an 8-person board, and we're all volunteer, and so we really do focus very specifically on the Ukiah Valley. We would love to see things get built out, but it takes a lot of vigilance because that trail did exist. There was a county-wide trail map from the 1970s that the Northern California Trails Council, I think their name was, primarily equestrian group, did great work back in the 70s, and that trail was on there. And I think there are a number of spots on that trail which either you can't get to or you can only get to if you know how to get there. We're losing that trail.
Yeah, we could get it back. It is recorded.
The 1.5 miles of trails on the west side, is it from the existing Logat Park?
Yeah, the Paths to Open Space and Creeks Commission of Ukiah did a really good job of just realizing that the city owned that property and that it was sitting there unused, and it's contiguous to the Logat Park, so it essentially added another 90 acres to that park and allowed us to build a new loop of trail.
You have a map of that at your table?
No. We're working on maps. Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.